medium-sized enterprises in the East Africa region, sir?
Okay, first of all, small and medium-sized enterprises, maybe including micro enterprises. So these MSMEs, they are contributing to the economy of East Africa significantly. Like, for example, 80% of the jobs in Kenya are from that segment. And also they are contributing to the 30+% of the national GDP. So first of all, let's acknowledge that they are critically important for the economy, right, and our country here. Having said that, when it comes to COVID, unfortunately, the impact is disproportionately, happening in this MSME segment, right? Unfortunately, in Kenya, 80% of the SMEs are basically saying they have a high or very high business impact due to the COVID. Right? So it's critically important for government and also the business leaders to think about how to revitalize these SME sectors. So I would say this recent move by the Kenyan government of allocating 3 billion shilling for the credit guarantee scheme for SMEs, it's a great step. Right? But at the same time, we have a lot more to do, including, for example, providing more flexible approach for security or collateral when it comes to providing lending to the SMEs, or establishing much better understanding of risk profiling of these SMEs segment. Today, they are not having an access to the finance because they don't have collateral, they don't have a great credit history, right? Because their scale of the business is suboptimal. Right? So private sector and government can work together to address these kind of topics, I guess.
Indeed. But then again, because we are already here in the middle of this pandemic and nobody knows when it's going to end, how can these businesses effectively operate in this era? Are there specific strategic areas that they should be looking into?
Okay. I'd say there's 3 things you can think about. The first of all, immediate focus is how to better prepare your workforce and your workplaces for this new reality, I'd say. Right? Let's assume that we are not going back to exactly the same norm as before. Right? You need to provide a safe and compliant environment where your employees can work comfortably. So that's the very first step you need to think about. And next one is obviously cash and liquidity management. I'm sure many people are running all over the places right now for this cash and liquidity management. Right? For example, you need to set a dedicated team to closely monitor the cash situation and also define the stringent rules for the discretionary spending, so you can make sure that at this really tough time, your cash management is really tight. And the last thing is how to sustain your supply and also demand side. You need to retain and you need to continue to serve your customers, right, through different channels. You can leverage online, you can leverage different channels, but customers are waiting for you, you need to serve them. And also supply side, right? You need to work with suppliers or distributors to make sure that critical supplies are arriving on time to you. For that, you need to have a very stringent inventory management, not like weekly basis, it's more like daily basis.
Let's talk about some of the strategies that businesses in the region can use to regain their strength. And while at it, I know you mentioned earlier, but how governments can support them.
Right. So I would say, first of all, government and also business leaders, they need to acknowledge that this managing COVID-19 is not a short-term or once-off event anymore. It's I'd say, mid-term journey. And so having this mindset is critically important for you to sustainably address the situation. Then we, as a Boston Consulting Group, we typically classify this journey into 3 different phases. The first phase is when the economic activity goes significantly down because of the international and local lockdown. And the second phase is the fight phase, where the economic activity is gradually going up. And I think Kenya and East African countries are now entering into this recovery phase or fight phase. Then lastly, after the long fight phase, you will have this potential rebound phase, where your economic activities could surpass the original state. So the key question for the government and also the business leader is how long the second phase of fight phase will continue. And it's critically important to distinguish different sectors because some sectors are experiencing longer period. For example, the tourism industry, who are relying on the international travelers, right? Versus local industry or local services who are selling essential goods to the Kenyan population. Right? The timeline of the recovery might be quite shorter than the previous one. Right? So first of all, we need to clearly differentiate, the different sectors and providing a specific support for those sectors. Then I would say, because of the uncertainty for everybody, including government and business leaders, it's very important to think about the potential scenarios, not just government lockdown scenario, right? But what about the international side of demand will be recovering, right? How quickly, right? What will happen if the second wave, attacks Kenya or other neighboring countries? So you need to develop your own scenario ABC and be prepared for those multiple scenarios.
Now, Mr. Takeshi, no one saw this coming. So let's talk about how moving forward, businesses can build resilience to withstand future shocks. We hope they don't come, but in the event, how do businesses build resilience?
Right, I think you are right. Our mind is 100% or 120% occupied by COVID today, but we should expect that something similar will or could happen in the future, right? So maybe there are two things you can think about in addition to what I already talked about. The first one is how to make your supply chain future-proof. So this includes, for example, if you are depending on one country for your supply, how you can diversify that global supply chain or regional supply chain, or how you can internalize those supply chain to Kenya. That means local sourcing, for example. Right? So that's one thing, future-proof supply chain. Another thing I can think about is the digital side. A lot of companies, including our clients, are now actively thinking about how to digitize their ways of working to make their operation much more efficient at the same time, pandemic or shock resilient. Right? So this can be an opportunity for you to review the very old-fashioned or traditional ways of working, right? By replacing that with a digital or technology solution to make it more sustainable, efficient, and future-proof. And it will definitely help you on the cost side as well.
Indeed, lastly, because we don't have a lot of time, let's talk about the BCG. Let's take a look at the BCG report, especially where it outlines some potential opportunities to create advantage in an adversity like this one.
Yeah, right. So in addition to what I already talked about, I would say, first of all, customers' expectation and the preference has been changing even today because of the situation. So let's try to capture the newly emerging opportunity in terms of the customer's demand. Right? For example, some insurance companies are providing discount for the automotive insurance premium because they know majority of the cars are not as active as before. So the risk is lower. Why don't we provide discount? Which is helping for them to retain the customers and also acquire the new customers from other insurance company. Right? And second thing is, it may sound counterintuitive, but this is not a bad time for you to think about merger and acquisition play if you have a financial muscle to do so. Right? Some companies who has a strong business model, right, and viable business might be very much struggling precisely due to the COVID and thinking about selling their business. So for those who can afford, this is not a bad time to think about these aggressive growth plans.
Indeed, thank you. So that's all the time we had. Thank you so much, Mr. Takeshi Oikawa. He is the managing partner, Boston Consulting Group. He's also an author of the East Africa Business Rebound Report. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Okay, so we're taking a short break here on Bottomline Africa, but stay with us. We still have lots more after the break, even as I now leave you with Destination Africa.